Eyeglasses are important to a lot of people, whether they're cheaters that we get at the drugstore, or they're prescription reading glasses, or glasses that we use to drive, or sunglasses. We all want to keep them protected. And these flimsy little cases that you get with them, they just don't work very well. They slide in and out very easily. And I always find that when I'm taking them out of my purse, well, that's what happens. They just fall right out. And I don't really want to scratch them. And then the hard cases that you get, well, they just take up a lot of space. I want something a little bit more stylish that also protects and doesn't take up as much space. One of the projects we're going to do today is this quilted eyeglass cover. It's got a Velcro closure and it's got a nice cotton lining, keeps my glasses protected and out of the way, and it doesn't take up as much room. Well, another issue that I also have, among many, but is a tissue issue. These tissue packs are great, but when they start being in your purse after a while, they just don't stick anymore, and the tissues rub up against everything, and well, they get a little ratty. Nobody wants to wipe their nose with a ratty tissue. So we solve that by creating a tissue cover. This great tissue cover is made from scrap material, and it keeps your tissues clean and protected in your purse. And it's really cute. So today, join me as we make both of these projects to solve our little purse problems. Welcome, I'm Suzette, and this is So Suzette, where every project is a chance for us to experiment and learn so you can sew better, sew happier. Let's go. We're starting out with the Easy Pocket Tissue Holder from Deb's Days Designs. I found the pattern on Etsy, and I'll put a link to it in my description so you can grab that for yourself as well. She calls for 2 pieces of 3.5 by 5.5 fabric, 2 pieces of 3.5 by 3.5 contrasting fabric for the front, and then 3.5 by 5.5 inch 1 piece of backing fabric. I made a couple of samples beforehand, and this is the one that I made with the 3.5 by 5.5 fabric, and this is the one that I made with the 3.5 by 5 inch fabric. The reason I made this one with 5 inch squares is because I collect my scraps after I've been quilting or sewing and with my cotton fabric, and I cut them up and save them. So I have a bunch of 5 inch squares, and this is perfect. The tissues fit in here just perfectly. So we're just going to make this version today. If you want to follow along her directions exactly, that's fine. Just know that it works both ways. So I've already pre-cut my fabric. These all started out as 5 inch squares. This is my backing fabric, which is 3.5 by 5 inches. This is my fabric for my front, which is 3.5 by 3.5 by 5 inches, pardon. And this is my contrasting fabric, which are 3.5 inch squares that I've cut down from a 5 inch square. And I've already gone ahead and pressed off camera. You want to press them in half, all of the front pieces, so that you have a nice clean edge here. And then we're going to start layering these on. Right side up for the backing fabric, you're going to lay raw edges together for the main fabric here. And then for my contrast, I'm going to lay this on the end, and I'm going to just lift up one of the purple strips here and lay that over, kind of like a little basket weave. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. And I'm going to lift up the opposite end and tuck that under there. And that's it. It's pretty simple. You can pin or clip to hold everything in place. And we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and stitch it all together. Putting the tissue holder together, I'm trying to get all of my raw edges nice and close and even. I'm going to put a little clip right there just to keep everything together because there's so many layers. So see, this one's already shifted from the cutting table to my sewing table. So I'm just going to make sure that everything is neatly lined up. Just get a clip, put a clip there. You can pin it if you don't have clips, that's fine. I like using the clips because they don't leave the bump like a pin does. Just get everything nice and lined up, and that's it. Just need a few clips. I'm going to start sewing that clip over a little bit, right on this edge. 1/4 inch seam allowance, regular setup for straight stitch, regular presser foot, universal size 12 needle. Just stitch till you get to your corner and pivot. We're just going to come up to the end here, and we're just stitching straight up to our original line of stitching. Maybe cross it by a stitch or two, and then back tack a couple of back tacks, and that's it. So we don't need to leave an opening to turn this because the opening is already in the center, and we're just going to use that to turn everything. Now I do want to finish my edges. A few ways you can do that. You can pink the edges with a set of pinking shears. You can zigzag the edges on your sewing machine, or you can use your serger if you have a serger. I'm going to clip my corners so that it turns easier. So when you clip your corners, you want to clip at a 45-degree angle like that, right up to but not through your stitching. That might be hard to see because it's a darker material. I tried to use a little bit lighter thread on there, but right there. Nice. All right, so all of the corners are clipped, and now we're just going to change the machine stitch to a zigzag. I'm going to make it 2.0 in length, and it's a 3.5 width, which is fine. And we're just going to put the needle down right on the edge of the fabric. And as long as we're not crossing our original line of stitching, we're fine. And the needle can go right to the edge of the fabric or right off of it. That's either way is okay. I'm going to raise the needle when we get to the corner, and then we're going to start over on the other side. Last side. Oop. I heard that. I don't know if you heard that. Look at that. Now I got a little bit of a mess going underneath with our bobbin thread. Something happened. So now we have to check it out and make sure. I think we might be out of bobbin thread. No, it's coming off fine. All right, well, sometimes things get out of whack. Just going to rethread the bobbin. Fingers crossed, everything goes fine. Oh, that sounds better. And that's it. The edge finishing stitch is done. All right, and now the magic. Pull open the flaps. Grab your corner. I'm going to fold the corner down a little bit, pinch it between my finger and my thumb, and just push it out. And then we'll shape it after. There we go. And my favorite shaping tool, a double-pointed knitting needle. Just going to get that in the corner, gently but firmly shape that corner up so that it's nice and smooth. There we go. Corner number 2. Make sure you're not between these 2 layers. Make sure you're inside. It's done. All ready to put your tissues inside and throw into your purse. And you're ready to go. Now let's get to our quilted eyeglass case. I'm going to start out with a quilted pillow sham that I found at a thrift store. And as you can see, I've been cutting into it for other projects. But I really like the stripe in this, and I think it's going to make a really stylish case. You can download the pattern in the description below. It's free, and we need the quilted fabric, and I need a lining fabric. So I chose just a basic solid light blue, and just make sure that the pattern fits on there perfectly. It does. Now the only other decision I have to make is where do I want the pattern to fall, as far as what kind of colorways do I want in my eyeglass case. And I think I'm going to stick with these blue, green, and purple kind of colors down here. So we're going to come over here on this side, and I'm going to put my blue fabric, my lining fabric, here as well. That way I can cut them both at the same time. Work smarter, not harder. Make sure my grain line is somewhat straight. Put my pattern piece on there. And you can pin it now, or you can use pattern weights. I like pattern weights. I've been really using them a lot more lately. These happen to be furniture slides that you put on your legs of your furniture to help them slide around. I found them at an estate sale, and I think I ended up getting 12 for $1 or 50 cents or something like that. But I did wash them, but I like them because when they're on the fabric, if I put them with the shiny side down, I can slide them around if I'm using my acrylic ruler to cut into things, or if I need to make markings, I can move them out of my way, but they stay on my pattern. Or if I don't want them to slide around a lot, I can put the rubber side down and it doesn't slide as much. So we're just going to place a few here, and they're a perfect weight. Rotary cutter or scissors, and I'm just going to start cutting on the side of the pattern, being very careful not to slice into the pattern. And I overcut just a little bit to get to the corner. Okay. Oh, we just missed this corner down here a little bit, so let's make sure we get all of that. And I'm just going to pull my fabric away, make sure everything got cut properly, and there we go. Take all of our scraps. And even all of these little tiny scraps, I save all of these in a separate bag, and I use them for stuffing when I'm making something that might need some kind of stuffing, and it doesn't need to have an amazing amount of shape like a stuffed animal or something. But if I'm stuffing something else, then it's a great way of using up that fabric and not throwing it in the landfill. Okay, and then here we have our pattern and our cut pieces. Okay, now we need to mark our lines and our edges so that we have all of those when we go to the sewing machine. I'm using a friction pen. One of these days I'll get some of the more felt tip ones, but these still work. They're heat erasable. And I'm going to just punch a hole right here and mark where my snap placement is going to go. And then my snap placement down there, make sure that I can see those. And then I'm going to slide my pattern a little bit to the left, mark where my fold lines are, and then slide my pattern to the right and do the same on this side. You could also make a small snip, but I use a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this, so I don't want to snip too close, and it is pretty thick fabric. I am also going to mark my snap placement on the front side. Well, snap placement, I say snap, you can use a snap. I'm going to be using Velcro, but I still want to know where it's going to go. There and there, and blue on blue is going to be pretty hard to see. So I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger there. And I can't even see that one down there. So I'm just going to fold my, there it is, right there. Okay. All right, so now I can see where I'm going to put my fasteners a little bit better. And we're going to go to the sewing machine and start putting this together. At the machine now, we have a size 12 universal needle again, and a regular presser foot, and a regular 2.5 millimeter straight stitch. We're going to put our right sides together, and we're going to find that mark, that fold mark on the fabric that we just made. And we want to put this right underneath the little window in the presser foot, so that lines up with the needle. At a 1/4 inch stitch, lower your presser foot, and then lower your needle. And then you start sewing. Grab your thread tails, just hold them out of the way, and a couple stitches forward, a couple back tacks, and then we're going to sew all the way around until we get to the next fold line where we're going to end our stitching there. Those are the 2 stars that were on the pattern, so from star to star. I'm going to sew forward until we get to that first corner, and we really want that corner just to end right there opposite the needle. And we're going to lift the presser foot, pivot our work, and then continue on. And now we're going to sew straight down the top edge where the arrows are pointed to, and we're going to just sew end to end. And come to the end, I'm going to do a back tack, and then I'm just sewing right off to the edge. Okay, those are done. Just going to clean up our little extra thread tails here. So the next step is to take and open so that we can see the right sides. And we're going to take and put the right sides of the lining together, folding out the fold line that we marked, and then the right sides of the quilted fabric together. What should happen is that this seam right here should match up right exactly together. All right, and we're not sewing over this seam, so we don't need to nest our seam allowances at all. And I'm just going to take them and I'm going to pin them out of my way, like that, because I'm going to be sewing on this side and I want all of this bulk to be above my seam. So right there, that's where my seam line ends, right here. And that's exactly where I want to put my needle down into the fabric. So I can start there and then sew off the end of the fold. And I'm going to do that on both sides. Once I get that all arranged, I'm going to get my fabric underneath my presser foot, and I'm going to lower the presser foot to hold onto my fabric, and I'm going to try to put my needle down by hand using the hand wheel, and I want that needle to be exactly where that other seam line ended. Once I get that, I'm going to pull the pin out so that it doesn't add more bulk. Because this is quilted fabric, you could get some bunching in here. I don't know if you could see how that bunches up a little bit. I'm just going to kind of grab my finger, give it a little bit of a tug, and get it nice and smooth, and hold that down right there. I'm going to put my needle down and then just sew normal. And as I get to the end where that folded line is, I'm going to come close but not off. Do my back tack now, and then just sew right off of that fold. There we go. That one's done. And let's do the other side. Now on this side, I can't see where that seam line stops if I flip it over here so that I can sew this side. So I'm going to actually start with the folded side. The same thing is going to happen though. I'm going to put my finger in there and get it nice and smooth. Get my thread tails out of the way. And I'm going to start at the 1/4 inch, but I'm not going to start right at the fold. I'm going to start a stitch or two beyond it. And I'm going to do a couple of back tacks. And now I'm going to grab my thread tails and I'm going to hold them really tight so that I can guide that fabric through, because it is pretty bulky. And once it starts going on its own, I can let go and know that the feed dogs are going to take it all the way. And I am now approaching that seam line, and I just want to be exactly on it. So I can kind of lift my presser foot and take a peek under to see right where I am. I think I'm on it. So I'm going to do my back tack now, and then raise my needle and my presser foot. Not too bad. It's only like a 1/2 or a 1/4 of a stitch off. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Now we're going to flip it around and we're going to work on the lining fabric. I have to take and move that flap out of the way again. And I'm going to move the bottom flap out of the way, the little tiny side there. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pin this out of our way so that we don't have to deal with it when we're sewing. I'm going to close up one side. The other side, I'm only going to close up just about a 1/2 inch on each end. I'm going to leave as wide of an opening as I can because we still have to turn this right side out. And with the quilted fabric, it's going to be quite bulky, so I want to leave as much space as I can. Let's work on this first side. See how that's really, really bulky right there? What I want to do is I want to put my needle down and I want to come right there where that seam is, right off of it and not above it. Lift that presser foot up and get my seam line right inside that viewfinder, and I'm going to pull my pin. And we've got all of this bulk up here. So we have to deal with this because this is now got a lot of space in there. So see how that space is in there? That's not going to give me a really good stitch. So what I'm going to do is I have a piece of fabric that I use to stitch on and off of occasionally. I call it a spider. People call it all kinds of different names. I'm just going to fold that up and push that right up against that seam, so that it gives the front of my presser foot something to lay down on. I'm going to put my needle down right where it needs to go, and we're going to start sewing as normal, just keeping that piece of fabric right there. Once the back side of my presser foot here is off that hump of fabric, I can pull this one out. 1 or 2 more stitches. There we go. And now we're back to normal. Back tack, raise, leaving this hole to open and turn. And I'm going to come down, and it's just going to be the bottom 1/2 inch. Don't sew off. Come back a stitch or 2 and then sew off. All right, now we have our opening to turn. Flip all of our extra threads, and then on the other side, this one we're just going to stitch all the way closed. That's easy. Pin your bulk out of the way. All right, see how that's not lined up really well right there? That's not even a good place to start. We don't want that. We want to keep everything as lined up as perfectly as we can. When you start off aligned, you will end more aligned as well. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Still pretty bulky, but we can deal with that. Get the end of the stitch right in that little window. Put the needle down, pull the pin out. And we're going to use our little folded up piece of fabric here. And notice I'm not putting it very close to the needle. It's just underneath the presser foot here because I don't want to sew it into my project by mistake. All right. Clip all of those threads off, clean all of the loose threads off the machine, and here we are. So let's look at it. So right here, I have a little bit of a pucker, which means I sewed too far up. So I'm going to snip that stitch because I don't want that to be an issue. And I'm going to come to the inside and I'm going to snip the stitch here as well. That way we don't have that pucker. And then I'm going to re-sew over it, making sure that I catch all of that nice and neat. That caught my thread tails, so let's pull those out. It looks a little bit of a thready mess right now, but we have it corrected. So there you can see there's no more pucker, just a little bit of the bulk that's above it. The next step is to actually finish some of these edges and turn it. I'm going to finish with some pinking shears. I think that's the easiest way of doing this. We don't really need to have a sewn edge because it's all going to be turned on the inside, but we do want it to be able to turn with less bulk in the seam. So I'm just going to use some pinking shears. All right, if you don't know what pinking shears are, they're a pair of scissors that have this zigzag blade on them, and they cut exactly as they're shaped. So we're just going to take and we're going to cut close to, but not through, the stitching. So it just gives us a thinner edge here. And the pinking shape, the zigzag shape, just helps all of these threads to stop raveling. So it's just a little bit neater when we go to turn it. We don't have to deal with all of these threads coming off all over the place. Just go nice and slow. And now I'm going to cut the edges. I'm going to snip off a little bit of that corner there, right there, just so that it turns a little bit better. We get a nice neat corner. Everything is as clipped as I can get it now. Time to turn it. I'm going to start by bringing the quilted fabric through first because that's the thickest. So I'm going to start with the bottom bag, and I don't know if you can see how I'm doing this, but I'm just kind of folding over the edge on the seam line and pinching it between my finger and my thumb, which is inside. And I'm just going to push that nice and gentle through the opening and the lining. And then I'm going to, once that's through, I'm going to push my thumb back in and go to the opposite corner and do the same thing. Kind of fold that over, pinch it between my thumb and my forefinger, and very carefully, gently, I'm going to push that corner through the hole. The reason I'm doing, you can turn it any way you want. I'm starting with the quilted fabric because it is the most bulky. And if I can get that through first, then the rest should be just nice and easy. So very calculated. I'm just pulling the quilted fabric through and pulling the bag, the opening of the bag over it. And then there we go. It's coming out perfect. And everything is turned right side out, except for the flap. So when we're going to go back in with our thumb and just get that flap. There we go. That's a nice corner right there. There's our other corner. And to shape my corners, I'm going to use a turning tool. Well, a tool that I use to turn. I think that's about as good of a corner as we're going to get there. And that one looks pretty good. And then our corners for the flap. They all look pretty good as well. Terrific. Let's iron. Let's take a look. Now what we want to do is we want to take that lining fabric and just kind of take our thumbs and roll it slightly to the back edge of that seam. And we're going to get the iron in there and just give it a little bit of a press with some steam. Just keep rolling that lining back just a bit. That way it doesn't show from the front edge. I'm going to get a lot of steam in there, and then we're just going to use the tailor's clapper just to set all of that in there. The last thing I want to do is to fold that down and give it a little bit of a press at the top. However, as soon as I do, my mark is going to go away for my Velcro. So just be careful that you don't hit that end. I think I've already taken it off the top inadvertently. Just going to get that on there, give it a good press, give it a little shot of steam there. And now we're going to go back to the sewing machine and we're going to do our edge stitching all the way around the edge. Last 2 steps, 3 steps actually, we forgot the fastener. Back at the sewing machine here, we're just going to pull the pocket bag out. And I want that corner to stick out just a little bit there. There we go. And now I'm just going to take these 2 raw edges and fold them in. Just kind of roll that in there, nice and gentle, and then pull on the ends, and you should get them to just kiss like that, meet up nice and cleanly. And this time we're going to sew really close to that edge. So I'm going to put my needle in the middle position and come just off of there with the edge of that line of, I'm going to just come off and have the edge of the fabric just over the line where I'm going to be sewing. So stay nice and close, just to seal up that hole. And when you get past it, just going to do a back tack, and we're closed. Now you're going to take and tuck that bag in. I'm going to push that corner back first and then push it down into the corner here. Okay. Now you can choose to edge stitch first, or you can choose to put on your Velcro first. It doesn't matter. I'm going to edge stitch mine first. I'm going to take the whole eyeglass case and turn it mostly inside out. And then I'm going to take, and right here where the flap meets the bag, I'm going to start there or thereabouts. And I want to be able to watch so that I can see that that lining stays to the back side. And when we edge stitch, it's just what it is. You're close to the edge. I'm making sure that all of my bulk is pushed out of the way, that I'm not going to catch anything other than just where the lining meets the main fabric. Now, I could have changed my needle to a bigger size, but I think the machine will handle this just well. So as we're coming up to this intersection here, I want to try to make sure that I really get that lining rolled out of the way, and I want to keep that L shape. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. Here's right here, and then the L right there. And I'm going to come down into the flap before I make my turn. When you get to the thicker parts, just slow down. Your machine should be able to handle that. And then we're going to do the same thing here when we get to these corners. We're going to let that corner come up to my 1/4 inch mark there. And then I'm going to pivot. And here we are back at the beginning. Meet up with your original line of stitching. And do a back tack. All of my threads are now snipped off and everything looks pretty good. The only thing left to do now is to attach our Velcro. It's looking pretty good. So here's my mark for where my fastener is supposed to go. And I've got some Velcro, or generically it's hook and loop tape. And so that's where I want my fastener to be. I think I'm going to put this just slightly above that. And my piece is about 3/4 of an inch square, or 3/4 of an inch by whatever width the Velcro is. And I'm just going to put a little pin in there just so that I can hold it in place until I get it under my presser foot. Okay. This one you have to turn this inside out in order to get that under there. And we're going to stitch through all of the layers. I'm just going to line my needle up, make sure it gets down in there, and then I can remove my pin. Just sew a square all the way around. When I get toward the end, I like to snip my threads off just so that they don't get caught up in the stitching that we're going to be doing here. Back tack, and that's one done. Okay, so the loop piece is on now. Now we have to add the hook piece. I did lose my dot from when I ironed that. So I'm just going to bring this down and I'm going to measure it by eye as to where I need my another extra piece here. And I think right there is going to be good. And I'm not going to pin this one because I've got it pegged down with my fingers pretty well. And we're just going to sew this one on now. There we go. And that's it, folks. We are going to be able to close this up. You can give this another little press across here just to make sure that this stays with a nice crease in it and keeps your glasses closed. But that's it. Glasses will fit. Glasses will be protected. Glasses will stay protected. There we go. Well, there you go. Solved a couple of purse problems today. No more ratty tissues and no more runaway glasses. Everything's going to stay protected and clean. Stylish, practical, handmade solutions. They're great. If you want to sew along, just check out the links in the description for the patterns. I'd love to hear how your projects came out, so let me know in the comments. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It really helps to be able to get it out to more sewists like you. Thanks for watching. Sew Suzette. Sew better, sew happier. Until next time.